The college football experience week 6 reaction show on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up, and when you do, sign up with the promo code TCESGPN. You get 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000 there. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Start crushing college football and NFL with Rhythm. Get your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. And remember, as always, folks, to let it ride.
This is Coach June Jones, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride.
Welcome to the college football experience. Week 6 reaction show, and we are reacting late because my ass was in Tempe, Arizona, having cocktails and watching Sun Devil football. Huge win there, as we'll get into that in a little bit. But specifically, but I mean, you had a crazy day, so I mean, I didn't want to not do a show for you, because normally we do our show every Saturday night. But obviously consuming and also watching games at that time, I was not able to do a show because the game was on when we normally react. So with that being said, you get a Sunday reaction show. That's how it comes into fruition right there. So yeah, we're going to talk about some of the biggest games. I think, that's what's funny. You can arguably say it might've been the best weekend of the whole entire year. So there is that going on. It seems to be just such a chaotic season, and to me further gives me belief that essentially the transfer portal and NIL are really balancing out the sport, and with the 12-team playoff looming, and hopefully they expand past that, we're going to have just an unbelievable rest of our college football season. I'm going to dive into it. I'll go through the slideshow. Shout out to the chat, youtube.com/the college experience. But I also want to say shout out to everybody on the trip, whether, Daniel and his group of friends there that came out, or Carson Brinkley, but in specific, Venetia's Pizza there. Those guys treated us like royalty over there in Tempe. Shout out to my guy Rennie at Venezia's Pizza. Go check it out. It's absolutely fantastic there. If you're in the Scottsdale and Phoenix area, in Tempe area, it's just, they're loaded up, and Venezia's Pizza there, right? Venezia's. It's an inside joke. Get on over there and have their pizza. It's fantastic though. No one does it better in the Tempe, Phoenix, Scottsdale area, and shout out to them for the hospitality. Obviously getting to go to Sun Devil Stadium, legendary stadium, getting to get on the field there. Truly awesome experience. And I know myself and the guys from the Sports Gambling Podcast, Sean Stacking the Money Green and Real Money Kramer, we're very, very, we're appreciative of that experience. So shout out to that and everyone we met up with. Really cool experience, and I look forward to doing it again one day. So cheers. Look, folks, want to tell you that the college football experience is brought to you by, right now, we're doing our best to try to raise support for Hurricane Helene. Obviously that was devastating watching it go through Western North Carolina, and really, it's going to be a while for them to get back up on their feet there. So that's why SGPN is teaming up with a local charity there, mountainprojects.org, to help give back. And get this, the biggest donation will get a guest spot on our college football pick show and a ton of gear that we're going to hook up. Go to mountainprojects.org, hit flood support, help out today, folks, if you can. They're just counting on us, man. Like this is, if you would want the same if this happened to you, so get on over there. We have, to me, like we have a responsibility as, Americans to help out our fellow Americans, especially when something like this comes. Up in the mountains, you probably didn't even have insurance on your houses. Your houses are gone. You're part of your some family members perhaps gone. Jobs are gone. Everything is gone. And we got to step up and please, if you can, mountainprojects.org, hit flood support. All right, we are back. Shout out to the chat. What's up with that shirt collar? Nothing. Nothing. But this is what happens when you've been slightly hungover today. Caught a flight back. My flight was quite hilarious. We had I believe a girls soccer team around 13 or 14 on the flight. And they were wanting on Southwest, you just fly whatever, your seat. And it was quite the scene. These girls had asked to sit together. Once again, it's like a 45-minute flight or 55-minute flight. Wanted to sit together. This guy didn't let him. Said, no, it's my seat. I chose my seat. Which was such a dickhead move. But then he calls her a bitch. A 13 or 14-year-old girl. I mean, it got a little heated. Sky Marshal was coming, so it was quite the day. Then I got home, had some stuff to do, and then just got tried to watch some games. Tried to watch a couple games there. So yeah. Anyway, quite the eventful day, and yeah, that's why I'm probably dressed a little bit like a bum here, man. I'm sitting around the house, kind of dozed off watching the Michigan-Washington game. I didn't get the chance, we were at a bar, so we didn't get a chance to really dive into like I normally keep pretty good notes on every game. Not really in this setting. But anyway, let's get to it. Let's start off with Thursday night's action. YouTube.com/The College Experience. You see if I can correct this here. Yes, Texas State and Troy. I hope you cashed in, folks, because we, and I mean me and NC Nick, locked up Texas State minus the points as they get a big win on the road there. Troy with Gerard Parker moves to 1-5. 1-5. Cashed in though with Texas State. Yeah, that was 38-17 final. Nice win there for Texas State, and they continue to look like contenders in the Sun Belt. That same night, I cashed in on Sam Houston minus 17, I think it was. Or no, 10.5. Yeah, I mean, we were off and running this week. The weekday games, I opened up 7-0 on these weekday games. Austin, we're gonna get there, man. I it's just going to breeze through these. I don't, because then you bring it back later in the episode and you're like, wait, we're talking Thursday or Friday. I did hit on Harvard against New Hampshire with the FCS. Nice win there. They won outright. That was a heck of a game there Friday night. Jacksonville State, halftime it was a little dicey, but they ended up prevailing, laying the 16 or 17 there against Kennesaw. Jacksonville State seems to be, ever since they made the quarterback switch to Tyler Huff, seems to be stepping up and looking like they're probably going to be one of the top 3 or 4 teams there in the CUSA. So shout out to Rich Rod. Kennesaw looks fucking horrible. They should have never ditched the flex bone, but that's a story for another day. And then look, I mean, we bet all these. The Houston Cougars plus 17, and they won outright. I didn't have the courage to bet it outright, even though I thought it was possible. I think I might have if I remembered, but I didn't. I just took the points. Shout out to Willie Fritz and the Houston Cougars. TCU. Whew. That's a bad loss. At home, kind of just got dominated by the Houston Cougars there. So shout out to Willie Fritz, and tough loss there for the folks in Fort Worth who now go to 3-3. I needed that one because I had Houston on the win total over, and I had them, taking care of UNLV week 1. That didn't happen. So them getting this one is huge for me to get back on track to get that over. Also, we got very fortunate, but the locks kept coming as Michigan State covered 24 with a late field goal against these Ducks. Quack, quack, quack. Shout out to getting that lucky cover there. And the final game here, Syracuse on the money line, which I played, by the way. I had Syracuse +7. I had Syracuse on the money line. I forget exactly what that money line was. Obviously, they benefited from a horrible roughing the passer call, and I'd still love for some of these people to actually suffer consequences for those calls. Syracuse very well still could have won the game, and a lot of people say like UNLV probably should have won the game. I don't know that I'll agree with that, but because Syracuse would have probably made that field goal. Who knows? Maybe they miss. That call was horrible. You will not get an argument from me there, but I will say they did block 2 punts for a touchdown. So, I mean, yes, you got to reward that in one regard, but in the other regard, you're just saying, that, it's kind of phony points in a way. Like, would that happen if they played again? I mean, Syracuse had 492 yards to UNLV's like 350, I think it was. But anytime you get pick sixes or strip sacks or block punts or block field goals for touchdowns, of course it's going to dilute the offensive numbers. So anyway, shout out to the Qs for coming through for me, and UNLV that was a killer loss. If they would have had a third Power 5 loss, they're still in a spot. If you're a UNLV fan, don't panic. You're still in a spot. You take care of Boise at that filthy stadium, which, by the way, I mean, that's how shitty was that crowd? You are the talk of the town. Half empty stadium, ranked. Horrible. Go back to Sam Boyd. Listen to Pick Dundee. Go back to Sam Boyd, please. Anyway, that game was a very fun watch. It's a shame that roughing the passer was such a huge play in that game. Once again, the refs continue to make it about them and not about the sport. So, not about the teams. So, and then Saturday, look, I ended up betting NC State, and I ate shit because NC, of course, whenever I bet on NC State, I lose. I should bet on them more. Wake Forest grabs that win, 34-30. Grayson McCall gets knocked out of the game. And they ejected the player that knocked him out, even though he was just playing football. It was a terrible ejection, in my opinion. And you're seeing it once again ruin the sport pretty much on a daily, on a game by game basis. I don't know what it will take for us to correct this stupid rule that kicks people out of the game for just playing football. But anyway, shout out to Wake Forest and Dave Clawson. Big win there. Yeah, and he hasn't had a lot of wins at Carter Finley. They step up, they get a big win there, and they needed that. Once again, I took the over on Wake Forest, so I really needed that after the loss to Louisiana. So yeah, shout out to the Deeks. I did bet UMass and the points, and this one cash for me. For a second, I thought they were going to win the game outright as they were up 13-7 at half. Shout out to the Minutemen for giving me this cover. Yeah, Daniel says they didn't kick out the guy for killing McCall. Actually, they didn't. I could have swore he was ejected for that. Did they correct that in? Did they eject him on and then on review bring him back in? I was at a bar watching this, so I thought though that because I even had a couple DMs about him being ejected. But yeah, perhaps not. I guess. How about the UCLA Bruins getting the cover against Penn State? Catching 28. I think that even closed at like 29 and a half. But shout out to UCLA, Penn State, 27-11. They get it done. I just don't know. Penn State only had 322 yards of total offense. This is one where I think you sit there and say, you sit there and say, is UCLA just better than what we think? Is that perhaps like they played well against LSU, didn't win? I mean, UCLA is still going to be a horrible team, but I just think they're either a little bit better or the teams they're playing are a little bit worse than what we think. So, shout out regardless to the Bruins for getting the cover and Penn State for being one of the teams that haven't lost a game yet. Navy, Air Force. I did eat shit on this one. I bet Air Force. Navy. Let's talk about these midshipmen. They are 34-7 win here. They moved to 5-0. And you look now, they do play Biff Poggi and Charlotte, which we'll get to. But Biff Poggi and Charlotte, folks, are undefeated in the AAC too. So this is a huge game coming up this week. Shout out to Caleb. Appreciate you, brother. But Navy with Blake Horvath, you sit there and if you were to say like they're at home against Charlotte, you would have to favor Navy to get that game. Then they get the Notre Dame game. Obviously, they would be dogs there. But I mean, that game, they're playing with house money in that game. Then Rice at South Florida. Okay, it gets a little tougher down the stretch with Rice, South Florida, Tulane, ECU, and Army. But this has been quite the season so far for the midshipmen. And it's the way they're doing it too, with the way they're just completely whooping ass out of the single wing here. They had 463 yards of offense. And that's in an offense that kind of abuses the clock. So shout out to the midshipmen for getting that done. I ate shit on that bet there. Moving forward, the Pitt Panthers got it done against North Carolina. Let's talk about Pitt here because I mean the quietest 5-0 team in the country. And you look, they got Cal coming to town this week. I think it's a letdown spot for Cal, the way that College Game Day. Shout out to Berkeley, and I thought that was a great representation of Cal fans because I've always thought as someone that bartended here at sports bars for a while, I thought Cal always had more fans than people thought. Like I think Cal's fans are a little more passionate than UCLA fans or some of the other California schools. So that was cool to see that turnout there. But Pitt is 5-0. They got Cal and Stanford in Heinz Stadium, whatever the fuck they're calling that bullshit stadium now, for college. Look, it's a good NFL stadium, but I mean, the fact they detonated Pitt Stadium for the NFL stadium is one of the biggest tragedies in the history of college football. But Pitt could be 7-0 heading into November. So they're home to Cal. They get a bye week, and then they're home to Syracuse. Unbelievable. That could be quite the storyline there. And then you look at the remaining schedule after that. Now there are a couple of tough road spots, perhaps SMU or Louisville, and they host Clemson, but it's a nice schedule there for Pat Narduzzi. Wouldn't that be a magical season there for these Pitt Panthers? Moving forward, I did lock up Wisconsin minus the points. They won 52-6. Purdue's a horrible fucking team. This is one I did not. So, I mean, this line opened up at 11. I wanted to jump on it on last Sunday. For some reason, I missed it. And by the time the week was coming around, like I think when we recorded on Tuesday, it was at 13 or 14. And I liked it. I don't think I'm can't remember if I locked it up on the show or not. I don't think I did for some reason, but I think because it jumped that much. But Saturday morning, this was one that I bet. So shout out to the Badgers for getting that one and really taking care of business. Purdue's the fucking worst team. How bad is Purdue? I mean, we got to just fade them automatically every single week, I think. Like I already placed the wager on the Illini today when I was at the airport, minus the points. FYI, get ahead of schedule there. So shout out to Chris. Solo reaction show. Sometimes you got to do it, man. I was shocked by this next game though. BC, Virginia. We had this one on a little bit there at the bar, and BC was off and running early in this game. They had a 14-6 halftime lead, and I was convinced after the third that, because it was still 14-6 going into the fourth. I was convinced that BC really had this game in hand, but no, Anthony Calandria and Tony Elliott moved to 4-1 as they score 18 in the fourth and win 24-14 against the Wahoo, or against the Eagles there. What a win for the program. And this is one where I'll give Patty C his flowers here. They are better than what you think. Now they host Louisville, they're at Clemson, and then they're home to North Carolina. And that's a rivalry game. The North Carolina game, that game's always wild. So their schedule heats up right here. Actually, damn, after that, it's at Pitt, at Notre Dame, home to SMU, at Virginia Tech in the Commonwealth Cup there. Whew, you needed these ones at least, because if you go 5-7, I still think you might be encouraged to keep them for one more year. Yeah, big win for the Wahoos there. Moving along, I ate shit with this one. I had a pretty decent sized wager on the Louisville Cardinals, and I got to give SMU their credit here because the money is paying off. And Kevin Jennings has really been the difference when they switched from Preston Stone to Kevin Jennings. I really think this team kicked it into another gear. This was not a gimmick win either. SMU had 481 yards of offense, 20 more yards than Louisville. And this one hurts me for my future. Now, I do still think, because I have a ticket for Louisville to win the ACC, and I don't want to panic yet because the ACC is so wide open, but I think Louisville is just going to have to make sure they get Miami, which I kind of think they will. Because with two losses, like they lost to Notre Dame, that game's irrelevant. I factor in they probably lose at Clemson in a couple of weeks. I still think you can get to the ACC championship. So, and the same can be said for SMU. SMU's only loss is to undefeated BYU. We should talk about this for a second because now you're 5-1. I know NC Nick tweeted out an apology saying he was wrong about SMU. I think that was one of his locks, but you're 5-1. If you're an SMU fan, you're saying we got this. They're at Stanford and at Duke the next 2 week games. They should be favored in. They should be 7-1, and then November, home to Pitt, home to Boston College, at Virginia, and home to Cal. I mean, you could really build yourself into believing that this is going to be an 11-1 or 10-2 team. Very favorable schedule for the Mustangs, and I kind of think like they have the inside track now to be playing in the ACC championship. That's why it's going to be so critical for Louisville against Clemson, against Miami, and also Pitt. I think Pitt hosts Clemson, so Pitt's in that picture as well. But shout out to the Mustangs. Great story. I like seeing them get good. I know, behind the scenes, I think one of the most common misconceptions is that they were the ones cheating and they got the death penalty because they were cheating more or worse than others. That's not true. If anything, you look at that story more and more, I would say it's I would say they kind of got dealt the death penalty because of more so the threat of how well the program could be and how it threatened Texas and Texas A&M in those regards back in the 80s. So go do a deep dive on that if you get a chance. But shout out to them. 5-1 is 5-1. And then the Army Black Knights, didn't bet this game, but I did take Tulsa in the points on the pick sheet. But Army is just destroying everybody, 49-7. One of my favorite stories in college football. And you look who they have on deck, UAB and ECU, and you got to think, hey, they're gonna be. Did I say 5-1? They're 5-0. They will be 7-0 probably if they take care of business. And then they have the Commander-in-Chief Trophy with Air Force. But that's it in Mikey Stadium. They're at North Texas. North Texas historically has been horrible against triple option teams. Then they get the Notre Dame game in the Bronx there, but they'd be playing with house money, and then close the season with UTSA and the Navy games after the college football playoffs. So They might be playing Navy in back-to-back weeks, essentially. That would be absolutely fantastic. But for me, as someone that loves the service academies, what a win, and Jeff Monken continuing to impress. This was huge for me, actually. I did not lock this on the picks page, but it mattered to me because I have Texas A&M to make the college football playoffs. I have Texas A&M on the over on their win total. And I don't even know how good they are. Like watching them these few weeks, I would say this is by far the highlight game for me. I also have the under on Missouri. So this was a very critical game as far as my pocketbook for season long bets. And they destroyed them 41-10. I'm telling you, you look at A&M's schedule now. I'll be the first to say they don't look as good as I thought they would. Now they are getting better. I thought this was their best showing yet. But you look at what A&M has on deck here. It's a shame they lost that Notre Dame game, but you look and say, okay, Mike Elko's got these guys at 5-1. Mississippi State is next. I don't think there's a way Mississippi State would win that game personally. I know college football has been crazy this year, but that would put them at 6-1. They're hosting LSU, and traditionally that's certainly a losable game, but I want to say the home team has won that game like the past 7 or 8 years. So you would favor A&M there, right? Then after that, they're at South Carolina. Okay, they could trip up there. They might, trip up one of these road spots. But then after that, you're home to New Mexico State, another historical SEC rivalry game that all these SEC teams play. No, I'm joking, but come on, that's a win. And then at Auburn, I think Auburn looks terrible. And then home to Texas. So I think they are in a great spot. They are in a great spot to play for the SEC championship here. Now, obviously, the season's been a ton of fun. It's been wacky. They could lose to LSU. They could lose to South Carolina. They could lose to Auburn. They could lose to Texas. But I thought one of the biggest hurdles for me in the preseason was getting the Arkansas game and getting the Missouri game. And they got both of those. And let's go. Gig 'em. Folks, want to tell you that the college football experience. Well, first, I just want to say thanks for tuning into the college football experience. If you can head over to Spotify and give us a 5-star rating, only you can prevent corporate gambling from taking over. So please, if you can, we'd appreciate that. Also want to tell you, we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Pick'em has one of the biggest menus for all sports: NFL, college football, CFL, MLB, MMA, WNBA, NASCAR, and much, much more. Their lobby is jam-packed with profit boost. You can now use specials and boost on all flex entries as well. So what are you doing? Sign up. But when you do, sign up with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Once again, underdogfantasy.com promo code TCESGPN. All right, we are back. And just talking about A&M. Next up, Trent Dilfer. I mean, this is a guy that when I look at UAB football, I say
modern day game does not impress me. It's super easy when you don't get hit as a quarterback and when you can't reroute receivers and when you can't hit guys across the middle. I love Tom Brady. I love Aaron Rodgers. I love these guys. It's not impressive. What's impressive?
It is not impressive when you lose 71-20 at home. And to think this is perfect if you believe in karma here, because Bryant Vincent, who filled in after Bill Clark, Bill Clark, UAB coach that stayed through the program being shut down, and Bryant Vincent filled in for him his final year there. Clark had some big time spinal surgery, I believe. And Bryant Vincent, 7-6 season, bowl season. Everyone thought they were going to retain him. They don't. They go hire Trent Dilfer. Bryant Vincent goes to New Mexico for a year where he really improved their offense. They still had a bad season, but then he gets the ULM coaching job, and we'll talk about ULM. But they're in first place in the Sun Belt right now. So, and they beat UAB head to head. So something there, 71-20. I do think there was about 6 people at that UAB game. And I would expect Trent Dilfer to be, I don't know that he'll make it through the season at this point. I see the chat talking about Tulane being the best group of 5 team. Perhaps I tend to think Boise might be if I had to vote, but Tulane would certainly be probably second, and then UNLV in the mix there as well. Shout out to the Green Wave for just putting it on the UAB Blazers. Western Michigan, Ball State. Yeah, I did bet this. I thought it was going to hit. It looked like it was going to hit, but Ball State scored a touchdown with 1 minute and 45 seconds left. Backdoor cover. Shit on my bet. Western Michigan gave up more points than I thought they would. Giving up 42 to Ball State. Maybe the Broncos aren't as good as I thought they were. I did eat shit there on that wager. The great story about JMU West continues as they win by 17 Lakeside as Indiana takes down Northwestern on the lake there. Shout out to the Hoosiers for getting it done. I think this is one of the best stories in college football. And you look at what we have here. The Hoosiers are 6-0. They got the bye week this week, and then they're hosting Nebraska, which I would favor Indiana in Indiana against Nebraska. So you're talking about 7-0. They could be. Then you're hosting Washington. Now I would favor Indiana against Washington, not by a lot, but I would favor them. So you could be 8-0. Then you're at Michigan State. I would favor Indiana, but not by much, 2.5 maybe or something. You could be 9-0. You're home against Michigan. I think Michigan probably deserves to be favored, but not by much. Maybe a 50-50 game there. But you get that and you're at Ohio State, but who cares if you lose that? You might be in a spot where you beat Purdue the final game of the season. You're 11-1 and you're playing for the Big Ten championship. I mean, this is a fascinating development. It's so great for the sport to see these teams come up. It's been a long time coming. And this is what's great about NIL to me. Is that this is going to be the new norm, I think, is that you're going to see, whether the portal or whether NIL, not that I know that Indiana spent a ton on NIL, but they definitely did more than I think normal. We could bring in Curtis Rourke and a few other guys, and then Kurt Cignetti bringing basically all of JMU there. I think it's just so great. And I think now you're going to see the flux of NIL. Indiana spends in basketball. You go 11-1 or 10-2 or even 9-3. I think the fan base will be ignited. And I think that's a scary thing for, not that I think Ohio State would be losing sleep about it, but I just think for the moving forward, the closer that balance gets. Before that gap was there, you didn't have the fans really buying in. You start buying in and I really believe you could see an impact. You've seen it already. Like the money follows itself. You know what I mean? Like you'll see it, whether it was TCU, for so long, in the CUSA or something like that, or if you follow their rise and the amount of money that came in after that, it's just, and that's just one example. I could do a fucking hour on this topic, but anyway, shout out to the Hoosiers for going Lakeside and getting that dub. I did bet the Iowa Hawkeyes and I ate a bowl of shit here. I thought I was okay when it was 7-0 at halftime. I was like, this is perfect. Ohio State's going to win 17-3. No, they win 35-7. I did think it was one of the more risky locks that I bet, but I just thought Iowa's defense would be able to bang with them a little longer than they did. My mistake. And how about Marshall destroying Appalachian State? You wonder, Patty C's point on our, it's like, where did they practice? How much time? They're talking about App State potentially playing at Wake Forest Stadium, I've seen, for the remainder of the season. So I think Patty C raised some good questions, and that's why I didn't bet this game. Going back to Ohio State, I see the chat talking about like they look incredible. I didn't think Iowa ever stood a chance to win this game, even like pre-episode. I just thought, or pre-game, I just thought they would be able to hang in there with their physical nature on defense. But no, App State, by the way, I see Rob Donaldson saying they look bad. Yeah, I mean, and I also think like I don't know what their practice schedule was like, but where the fuck would they practice last week? I'm curious. And I guess we should have locked up Marshall in hindsight. But yeah, they're in the basement of the Sun Belt there. Folks, what to tell you, the college football experience is brought to you by BetUS. Yes. Bet with the best in the business, BetUS. BetUS has been around for more than 30 years. You can easily deposit using cryptocurrency and get lightning fast payouts. Sign up and deposit $100 and you have a chance at winning a 1960 Ford Mustang. Woo! Use our link to sign up and get 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betus. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/betus. Promo code SGPN so they know that we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sports book. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. SGPN's proud partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, props, all that good stuff. All right. You can sit back and just copy one of the top performing models from the leaderboard if you wanted, or you could build your own model like I do. I press that build button, select a few things I like, and then Rhythm will build it around that. Rhythm gives you predictions for every game and player prop, and also has a slew of stats, research, trend analysis to give you even more betting insight. So what are you doing? Claim your free 7-day trial period today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's RITHMM. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. And remember, as always, folks, too, let it ride. All right. We are back. Yeah. I could still see App getting some, App State. They could still get like Old Dominion or Georgia State or the rivalry game with Southern, but yeah, they're not that good. You got to wonder if we're talking about the coaching. We talked about Dilfer being canned potentially. Sean Clark is one that would be interesting. Now, the fact he played at App, I think they might have a longer leash than so I don't know that they would fire him. But this is a big win for Huff too. I mean, people had rumblings that people were not happy with Huff at Marshall. Big time win there. This is another one I ate shit on. I had Stanford and the points. I assumed that Virginia Tech went to the farm to take on Stanford. I kind of thought this one was going to be cooked though when I saw that the starting quarterback was out there, Ashton Daniels. They went with Justin Lamson and he threw for 103 yards. But the bet was already placed, and that's how you lose that bet. I don't know if they would have covered if not. So, yeah, shout out to the Hokies laying the 8 there in Palo Alto. They win 31-7. Stanford's a hard team to understand. Miami, Ohio, Toledo. I did hit on this one, did not bet it, but Toledo wins by 10. And the Rockets, take care of business, kind of up the whole game. They got up to like a 14-0 lead. I caught a little bit of this on one of the televisions there. And then took care of business down the stretch. So 30-20, they got it done against the Miami Redhawks. And this one, which I should have bet, but I didn't. Bowling Green and Akron. Moorhead loses another close game. You worry about his hot seat. But damn it, they certainly covered against Bowling Green. This was a 20-20 game late. Bowling Green gets a touchdown to get that win. 27-20, they escape, but Akron gets that cover. All right. Yes, let's get to the elephant in the room here. East Carolina 24, Charlotte 55. I don't think there's been a more embarrassing loss in the program for Mike Houston. And he's had some embarrassing ones. And I think this is the game that officially got him fired. I believe this was the one, and rightfully so. You should be fired. And, you can't lose to Charlotte. You're 0-2 against Charlotte. I think he's 0-2 against App. I believe he's winless against NC State. So all the rivals within the state, he sucks. And, I think this was the nail in the coffin. Talking to friends there, I think he's fired. So that will come out. They'll probably, wait until the end of the year. But, because this is their first loss in the AAC. They still have a favorable schedule, but can't lose to Biff Poggi and Charlotte like this. But I will say this: if I'm looking for the silver lining here, my Charlotte win total over is looking pretty fucking great. So there is that. And shout out to Biff Poggi. If you're gonna lose, at least it's the Biff Poggi. But that's the worst loss in since the Scotty Montgomery era, in my opinion. And yeah, he should be fired. And I'm excited about. I'll be honest. One of the things I thought could be terrible about ECU's season this year was if Mike Houston ended up going 10-2 or 9-3 on the soft ass schedule, and we re-sign him. So there's a good thing here, despite us losing, is that I do think he got fired. So this is a good thing in that regard, because there's nothing worse than being tied to your coach for the next few years. Shout out to Charlotte. They're building their program. They're 3-3. I believe I need just one more win. If I stand corrected on my win total. Was it flat 4? I'm not sure. I got to double check it, but I believe I'm very, very close to cashing this thing now. Moving forward, Temple, UConn. This game was insane. And if you had the total in this game, you probably hate everything in life, because I believe you lost by UConn returning a fumble on a 4th and goal, the final play of the game. And it was a 99-yard return for a touchdown. One of the worst beats. I'm sure you'll see it on Scott Van Pelt's bad beats there. But UConn, which is another one of my locks, moves to 4-2. And this is where I mention they get Wake Forest this week. Winnable game. It's in Stores or Hartford at the Wrench. They get Rice next. After that, they get Georgia State, all at home. They could lose to Wake, but I fully expect them to beat Rice. I think they should be favored against Georgia State. I think they can get Wake too. So that would put them at 7-2. Then they're at UAB. I would say that's a win. That put them at 8-2. Then they're at the Carrier Dome taking on Syracuse. Okay, maybe they lose that. And then they're at UMass. So you're looking at what could be a big time year for Jim Mora and the Huskies, as I projected. That was my number one lock on the win total over in the regular season there. So hopefully, that hits there. Shout out to TJ Raw. Appreciate you, brother. Yeah, but didn't actually bet this game. But I did bet Georgia minus the points, and that did not cash as the Bulldogs win 31-13. And Auburn, let's talk about well, by the way, hold on. Well, I guess while we're at it, I'm getting ahead of myself. I start talking. Stan Drayton and Temple are 1-5 now. Now, the good news is Tulsa and East Carolina are on deck, but I think he's cooked too. Because I think you look at the rest of the schedule, there's, Tulane and Florida Atlantic and, North Texas and UTSA. I think Stan Drayton is out at Temple at the end of the year here. And moving along to this game that I was just mentioning, where I lost on Georgia minus the points here. I mean, Georgia did not look good to me. I had to throw this game on today more so. I mean, they pulled away, but like first half, they really struggled to me. Auburn, though, is the one I think you got to start worrying about here. 2-4 with Hugh Freeze. Now, I know they're recruiting well. They just got the kid to flip from Notre Dame to Auburn. But you just wonder. They're at Missouri next week. And we know Missouri is not that good, but I still think we favor Missouri after an embarrassing loss there. That would put Auburn at 2-5. After that, they head to Lexington. I think Kentucky's better than Auburn. That would put them at 2-6. Then they're home to Vanderbilt. Well, we're going to get to Vanderbilt in a second here, but I think Vanderbilt's better than them. Sure, could they win one of these? Of course. But that would put them at 2-7. And then ULM is looking way harder than we thought it was with General Booty there at the QB spot. And then A&M and then Bama. So, I mean, you were really looking at a really challenging schedule down the stretch here for Auburn. I'm sure they'll get a couple of those, but I don't think they're more than a 4-win team this year. And that's when it's going to get interesting. I think, they're not going to bowl with that schedule, I don't think, remaining. So, shout out to, you fire Brian Harsin. Harsin had a much better record than Hugh Strip Club Freeze thus far. It's going to be interesting to see down the stretch here. And Georgia, I still am not like in love with Georgia though. And I think that's one of the best things about this college football season is I just don't know. Ohio State looks great, but Ohio State's also played nobody. Iowa was the first team with a pulse that they've played. So I don't know. And Iowa, we know, is offensively challenged. So it's going to be fascinating the next couple of weeks. Yeah, Georgia, I guess they did what they had to do in the second half. I was impressed in the second half. The first half, I definitely had some questions on this Bulldog team, and I think I still do for like a national championship. I think I still have those question marks. I don't think they have that it factor that they had under Stetson Bennett and company. So, shout out to Auburn for getting the cover there. I lost money there. South Carolina, Ole Miss. This is another one that the more people you talk to, the more you were like, hey, everybody is on South Carolina. This is one you just knew that Ole Miss. Once you figured out that like as the weeks go on, I'm doing all these guest spots, doing all this, talking to some fans, and like everybody was on South Carolina. Ole Miss comes there, wins 27-3. Huge win for the Rebels to get back on track. They needed that one. Then you had Rutgers, Nebraska, which NC Nick talked me into betting. Boy, did I get fortunate. This game is hilarious to me. And by the way, let's just talk about this game because Nebraska won with 261 yards of offense. Rutgers had more yards of offense, but they were 4 of 20 on 3rd and 4th down. And that drop touchdown pass. I know exactly what you're talking about, Daniel. Me and Daniel were kicking back, watching the games. Unbelievable, man. This was an unbelievable. I mean, Nebraska needed this. And obviously that was a huge loss for Rutgers. If you're trying to have Rutgers, is there a path for them to get to the playoffs? I still think, believe it or not, though, that they could actually have that path. They're not that good though. And Nebraska moves to 5-1. And I think if you're a Cornhusker fan, you're sitting there saying, okay, but the problem is the remaining schedule for Nebraska is at Indiana, at Ohio State. Now home to UCLA, that's going to be a win. You're going to get to that Bulls. They have the biggest bowl drought for any Power 5 team right now. But after that, it's at USC. Then home to Wisconsin, which I think should be another win for them. And then at Iowa. So the schedule definitely gets a lot harder down the stretch, but that's why they needed this one so bad there. Shout out to Matt Rule and Nebraska. One of my bigger wagers of the day was Oklahoma State. And what the fuck is going on? What the hell is going on with Oklahoma State? Because they got embarrassed at home. And I guess I'm getting way ahead of myself. Where's the slideshow, Colby? Where's the fucking slideshow? That one was shocking to me. Like I felt like this was the one. And I can't help but notice right now, has Gundy lost it? I think certainly so. And this is where I remind people that when he is projected to be top 10 or top 15, they always suck when they're supposed to be top 10. They have shitty years. I feel like this has been a few years now where this has happened. And you look elsewhere, you look at the Big 12 right now. I mean, it's a ton of fun from a fan's point of view. Texas Tech's undefeated, 3-0. Everybody else, I mean, the teams that are flirting with them, West Virginia 2-0, Iowa State 2-0, Colorado 2-0, BYU 2-0. So it is going to be a fun final stretch here to see who ends up in the Big 12 championship. But I could not believe that I lost it, and especially the way I lost it. Shout out to Dub V and Neil Brown. Then let's get to the game. Alabama heads to Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt gets their first top 5 win ever. I mean, if this isn't the biggest win in program history, I don't know what is, but this is a huge win for me because I have a wager on the Vanderbilt over. I've been lobbying, and this is just so good for the sport of football to me, college football. Is I've been raving about Diego Pavia for 3 years now. This is like the third year that I'm saying this guy's fucking good and he's a gamer. And to me, he plays quarterback the way we should play quarterback. Yeah, like in my opinion, I think the quarterback position is ridiculous these days. It's like a bunch of pussies playing quarterback. And I feel like, the way the sport was intended to be is closer to what Diego Pavia does and the way he plays. You're supposed to be like your toughest guy on your team. And there's something about that I believe that's one of the reasons why he was successful at New Mexico Military Institute and then New Mexico State and now Vanderbilt. I think he makes your team naturally tough. He'll fucking throw down with anybody on the roster. Former wrestling champ, state wrestling champ in high school. He's just a bad motherfucker. And I believe the way he plays the game inspires your team to play harder and to fight. And I think, getting this win here against Alabama was nothing short of incredible. But I just think it's been a long time coming here. Like I there's so many things that I want to say that I feel like I'm right here. Yes, Diego Pavia I've been lobbying for, but Jerry Kill and Tim Beck, the OC, I have been sold on those guys for a while. And I think, when you look at what essentially they do, they run the triple option. Essentially, they basically do it out of the gun. You know what I mean? And it's something that I've said they should be doing for a long, long time. They haven't been, and to see it work against Alabama, this was not a fluke. This was a game. They stuck it to them. They were the better team. They never trailed the whole game. And obviously I did pay close attention to this one at the bar. And obviously I rewatched it today, but this was not a fluke. This one was beautiful for the sport of football, by the way. Pavia, by the way, only had 4 incompletions, 16 of 20. And one of those was a drop on like a 40-yard pass for 252 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also ran for another 57 on the ground, including like the biggest play of the game, probably. This is perfect for the sport. I don't know why more teams aren't running this offense or any variations. You're seeing it with Army and Navy this is a no-brainer to me. And it took Jerry Kill and Tim Beck coming here because, some people were saying, well, why couldn't Vanderbilt do this last year? Well, last year they were running a shitty offense and they didn't have, like, no disrespect to Ken Seals and what was it, 2 years ago, Mike Wright and the other kid that transferred to LSU. They got a guy a cutting edge offensive coordinator that's going to simplify the game with Jerry Kill there and the way Clark Lee can coach defense. They got it. And they went out and brought in like 6 or 7 guys, or maybe even more than that, player wise, from New Mexico State. Slew of those coaches as well. Damani in the chat. I know you know what I'm talking about. They took the goalpost down to the Cumberland River, and I hope you were a part of that mess. But this is fantastic for the sport, because as much as you want to crown Alabama, which obviously they have great players, I still believe in exactly what Vanderbilt did. The offense they run. I don't understand why 30 fucking teams aren't running that. I don't understand it. Like, whether it's that or whether it's the full triple, they should all be doing this stuff. And then when you go out and get a guy like Diego Pavia, who had no offers out of high school. He's playing quarterback the way you should play quarterback. And they dominated this game, folks. Like they were the better team. This was not like the old Misc game with Hugh Freeze, where the ball deflects off the helmet up in the air and Laquan Treadwell takes it for 70 yards or whoever that was. Right? No, this one, the better team won. And they almost scored again. They kneeled the ball down. They almost scored again. I look at the numbers here: 418 yards to 394. They were the better team. They were the tougher team. And that's why I think Vanderbilt is going to be a problem moving forward. Like, you look at this, they're 3-2. And sure, they got bit by Georgia State, but Diego Pavia had a gut check game there where they battled back and actually took the lead before giving up a long touchdown. And then they should have beat Missouri. They were better than Missouri. I think this team is actually like a legit team to win, 7, 8, 9 games. So like you look at it right now, they're at Kentucky next week. You fear for the spot because you party like that. You got to think, hey, Kentucky's in a great spot, but I kind of think Vanderbilt's better than Kentucky. I don't know. I feel like they're kind of similar paths, but I feel like Vanderbilt definitely better at the quarterback spot. So I think that's a very intriguing game, but you got to like the spot Kentucky's in. But if Vanderbilt can get that one, they got Ball State after that. You'll be sitting there with 5 wins there. And then they're home to Texas. And like those games, like just like with Bama, I know Texas will take it a little more seriously than probably they would have before this or after this outcome. But I still think those games like Auburn, South Carolina, LSU, those are all winnable. Even the Tennessee game. I don't think there's a 100% losable game on the remaining schedule for them. I think they could beat any of those teams. So let's go and shout out to my guy Damani, who I know is got to be fucking thrilled about this. And this was a lock of mine on the win total over, and it was simple because I think Diego Pavia, you don't need to go out and get this quarterback's going to throw for 500 yards. And no, I'm not trying to throw shit at Preston Stone, but he's the first one that came to mind of like big time recruit or some of these other guys that you see, they just go out and give them a ton of money. Diego Pavia, there's more guys out there like them. I've never understood this. We got in like the sport got in love with Mike Leach's system, and I love Coach Leach, but I don't understand why everybody has to copy that. So, certain teams, sure, but I don't understand it. When I look around, it's just crazy to me. Like it's crazy that you don't have more of this. Like Diego Pavia might not have an NFL career, although he's starting to play himself into like, at least playing pro ball somewhere. We'll see, but you don't need that. They started chasing the NFL at some point. And chasing, points for ticket sales or something. I don't know. I can't really put my finger on it. But, there was a time when you would win national championships with guys that didn't really have a future to play quarterback in the NFL, like Tommy Frazier or even Tebow, even though he ended up being a first round draft pick. I think we all knew. We're like, what? But I want that to continue on in the sport. Like, I don't think you need to cater to that. I think the fact you can go out there and just get a guy that is a tough fucking football player, right? That can be just good enough, athletically. I think I think that you could, like, in this day and age, no one else is doing that shit. And Diego Pavia, who continues to evolve too. Like you go back and watch New Mexico State two years ago, he was much more raw. But he was a bad motherfucker. Like he would talk shit to your fucking linebacker's face. You know what I mean? And that to me is contagious. And I hope more of this happens. I hope people see this and say, hey, yes, let's go. Or, not see this episode, but see what's happening at Vanderbilt. But I hope they see the episode too. Anyway, shout out to Vanderbilt. What a scene that was. That is why college football is the greatest sport on the fucking planet. I mean, how great was that? Going through downtown Nashville. It's just, this thing's incredible. And Jerry Kill is incredible. And I'm fascinated. I still want to know the backstory there. And, this is another example to me of the portal working out. And it's funny on today on social media, I saw so many people pointing out that, well, New Mexico State got hurt by this. So the small school did get hurt by this. Well, the small school Vanderbilt, which is definitely the small school in the SEC, benefited off this. But I still think something happened behind the scenes there. And I still think if Jerry Kill and Beck stay at New Mexico State, then Diego Pavia stays at New Mexico State. This was not a gun for hire. This is a guy who followed his coaches, in my opinion. I mean, I don't know this stuff, but I believe that. So I can't wait. I cannot wait. Vanderbilt's the most interesting team in college football. And if you watch their offense, they're basically running the triple option out of the gun. And it's refreshing to see. It's refreshing to see a quarterback like that, an offense like that. And just tells me that all these years screaming at those clouds, we're still on point. We're still on point here. Let's continue on. Yeah, but you wonder where Jerry Kill could end up because I think you're seeing this, or Beck. And that's another thing is Pavia might have one more year of eligibility because he was there, I believe, his freshman season at New Mexico Military, I think might have been the COVID year. I think I'm not 100% on that. They might have Pavia for one more year after this. Yeah. And 70 family members there. Fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, how about this? This is a new thing. And I think Vanderbilt can build off this, especially if they can keep Beck and Jerry Kill there. Vanderbilt will be, to me, a very good team moving forward. And I think they'll really going to put it on some of these teams in the SEC that keep chasing. Like, I can't help but notice Tennessee and Ole Miss, and they run the same off. They're doing the veered shoot and the running, and they're doing the Mike Leach air raid. And I just feel like everybody in all of college football is doing that. I don't understand. Like, and we were great friends with Coach Leach. I just don't understand. Coach Leach did that when no one was doing it, and he had great success when no one's doing it. But now everyone's doing it. I feel like this is when you switch back to something that's, worked in yesteryear, or maybe a new variation of it. I'm fascinated by what Vanderbilt's doing, and they're running the coastal, the coastal Carolina Grayson McCall stuff. And I think it's fascinating for the sport, and a win like that over Alabama just furthers the point, I think, that NIL is not ruining the sport, and the transfer portal is actually strengthening the sport, because any team can go out and get these guys, But I still think Jerry Kill, like, must have got pissed off at someone in the administration. I think there's more to that story than we know. And I think he just, said, "Hey, fuck you, I'm out." And then next thing you know, he's at Vanderbilt, and Diego Pavia comes over, and Eli Stowers comes over, and a few of those other guys, other coaches, other players. But yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, Damani. This is exactly what I'm saying. Switching to that spread option has saved the job. I agree. And I've been saying this for so long, though. Like, why do these shitty schools historically, Vanderbilt's great. I like them, but I'm saying they've been so bad at football. Certain teams have been so bad at football for so long. It's like, why would you not do that? And it's like, well, season ticket sales, who gives a fuck if you're losing by 70 every Saturday? What, don't you want to win? For me as a fan base, and I know this because I've hung out in Lincoln, Nebraska, where their fans would say, God, they'd give anything for the Tommy Frazier era, or the Scott Frost era, or the Brooks Behringer era. It's unbelievable to me that they sell them on this thing of like, yes, we're going to throw the ball all around, score 60 points, but the only problem is our defense might give up 70. So we'll flirt around with being a bowl team, and that'll be our future moving forward. No, I want to win and I want to dominate. You know what I mean? So it's like, why would you not do this? It doesn't make sense to me. I'm curious to watch. This is what's great about the sport. If you cover it like we do on the college football experience, is to watch it from the bird's eye view of whether it's either FCS or FBS or wherever, D2, D3, but to see if this offense picks up steam now. Will a bunch of more teams do this? Will we see the trend reverse itself? And that's why football is, to me, like the greatest sport on the planet. As much as I love basketball and baseball and stuff, it's like the evolution of the game is fascinating to me. And some of the old shit that you ran in 1920 still works now. You know what I mean? So, unbelievable win for Vanderbilt. College football is the best. All right. It's the absolute fucking best. I cashed on this. This was a fun one here, as Oregon State wins in overtime. They got Colorado State in the points. Double overtime, actually. Shout out to these Beavs, and it's been a very disappointing season for Colorado State, I might add. This is one of the ones I did also sprinkle some on the money line because I thought Colorado State could get this game, but Oregon State, considering what they all lost, they lost everybody. They're 4-1, and you look at they have a big game at Nevada this week. And by the way, I'm on Nevada, I think, but if they can get through that game in Reno, sure, you host UNLV, you're probably going to lose that. You're at Cal, probably going to lose that. Home to San Jose State. If you could just, to me, find 2 or 3 wins here and get back to a bowl game, that's a win considering what you lost. So, yeah, shout out to R Wright, also giving me $50. Dude, and it's not only him. I shout out to R Wright in the chat, youtube.com/the college experience. He says a bad P4 program should hire Chadwell and hire his offensive system. I 100% agree. But I don't think it's only him. I think Jeff Monken. I don't think you have to adjust to what everyone wants you to do. I think if Jeff Monken was to run his offense that he runs exactly at Army, if he went to Wake Forest next year or to wherever, they would be a fucking pain in the ass. The last times that we've seen like a heavy option attack P5 team, Georgia Tech, and they went to 2 Orange Bowls under Paul Johnson. Prior to that, it was Nebraska, who was playing for national championships. So I refuse to believe that this thing, and that's why I find that, like, to me, the most interesting teams in the country right now are like Vandy, Liberty, Army, Navy. Air Force is down right now, but we knew that because they lost every starter on their roster. But I just think it's a fascinating time for those schools and for the sport in general. But with the exception of these targeting penalties and these just too many rules. But shout out to the Bees for getting that done. They needed that one to move to 4-1. I still think to get to a bowl, you're fine. And shout out to Colorado State for getting me the cover. Old Dominion, Coastal gets it done. I almost pulled the trigger. I almost bet this too. I almost fucking bet this. I did not though, and Coastal wins by 8. Shout out to the other Tim Beck, who is now 4-1 there in Conway. After that, we go to, and you wonder, by the way, about Ricky Ronnie. Their team gets rated in the portal every year. You wonder if Old Dominion, what they do for the future. We'll see. I think Ronnie's a good coach. I think he should be brought back, but we'll see. Utah State was getting 27 on the Smurf turf in Boise. No. It was 49-17 at halftime. Nate Drilling, who's been on this show, the interim head coach. Shout out to Nate. We wish him the best, but I think Utah State will be looking for a head coach in the offseason as they join the Pac-8 or whatever the fuck they're going to call it. And then Boise, Ashton Jeanty, the most exciting man in college football. It's either him or Travis Hunter. Unbelievable. 13 rushes, 186 yards, 3 touchdowns. He only had 13 rushes. Unbelievable. Shout out to Boise, and they're the front runners to me. And then maybe the best story in college football, besides the ones I've mentioned on this episode, ULM takes down undefeated JMU. Patty C's probably still hammered at the bar from this one. And look, in the first quarter, I feel like JMU jumps up to like a 10-0 lead. And then you're thinking, JMU's going to run away with it. No, adjustments were made. ULM scores 14 in the second to take a halftime lead, or I believe they're up 14-13. And then they take care of business in the fourth quarter because it was a scoreless third quarter. This is a great story, man. So Brian Vincent got fucked over at UAB, like really fucked over there. This is just a fantastic story to sit back and watch, as ULM's been terrible. And I was a skeptic of them firing Terry Bowden, to tell you the truth. So I'm eating shit on this, but I like I thought Brian Vincent could work there, but I just did not think this would be one of the ones I would be most wrong about. I just didn't think in year one this would work out. I know the Sun Belt is down as a conference as opposed to years prior, but this is amazing. And I couldn't be happier for Bryant Vincent the way he was treated at UAB to see this. Now, if you're ULM, you're like, fuck, can we keep him at ULM? And you start looking at this. They're in first place right now. They're home against Southern Miss this week. They are better than Southern Miss. Now, they can't let this go to their head. But then after that, a huge game at South Alabama, which is kind of, to me, one that potentially could be in play for the conference. They're at Marshall. See, it gets a lot harder after that. At Marshall, home to Texas State, at Auburn, but still, like, they're going to be in the mix with the carnage in that. No one's that good in that conference. So I feel like ULM is in position to potentially play for the Sun Belt Championship. And JMU, obviously, that's a tough loss right there. And JMU they have a bye week and then they get Southern Miss, but they kind of have this loss was so big to them. I'm sorry, JMU is Georgia Southern and Coastal. Then they get a bye week in Southern Miss. But this one, you got to think they're going to be sick to their stomach here, because if they got this one, the remaining schedule for JMU is not that bad. But now we'll see, because this is one that stings. This one's that they need ULM to continue to win, so this win might mean something for them. Huge win there. I did lock up Southern Miss and the points, and guess what? Southern Miss and the points cashed. Let's go. Louisiana got the win. Shout out to that. I also locked up the Clemson Tigers against Saudi Arabia State as they got the win. Impressive wins by both teams. Florida State's fucking horrible. There was another guy reading the book again in the crowd. And Louisiana is still a contender to potentially win the Sun Belt too. I should mention that. As Michael Desmarais seems to be coaching himself off the hot seat. We'll see how the rest of the season goes. But Clemson obviously looks like the best team in the ACC. Perhaps, I don't know. I mean, SMU's in the mix. Miami, if they get any more bullshit, and Pitt and Louisville, I would say, all in that mix there. Moving along, South Alabama, Arkansas State. This was a big one. Arkansas State wins 18-16 against Fluff Bothwell and company. That was huge though, because South Alabama was one that I thought could contend. They're now 2-4. Arkansas State, even though they have that phony win against the FCS, against Central Arkansas, which shouldn't have happened. Sun Belt issued an apology after that one. But Butch Jones, another guy on the hot seat, can he get the Red Wolves to a bowl so he could potentially stay there? We'll see. Nice win for the Red Wolves there. I did eat shit on this one. I had Baylor plus 14. Iowa State is making me look like a fool every week. I felt good about this. Even 19-14 at halftime, I was like, okay, we got this. 19-14, and then Baylor actually took the lead in the third quarter before Iowa State just put it on them after that. Rocco Becht and Iowa State looking incredible. Incredible. You got to wonder now. Let's talk about Iowa State. They're 5-0. They're at West Virginia, which I kind of expect them to lose, just because that place is tough. But after that, they're home to UCF. They're home to Texas Tech. They're at Kansas, but it's not really at Kansas. It's at Arrowhead, which I think will be 50-50. They're home to Cincinnati. They're at Utah, which I expect them to probably lose. And then they're home to Kansas State and Farmageddon. You got to think, if they just win one of those 50-50 games and take care of business at home, like one of the 50-50 games to me is like at West Virginia, at Utah. And I'll even say like the Kansas or Kansas State games, like those are like kind of 50-50 in a way. They're close, man. I think like if they win at West Virginia this week, you got to start really thinking that they're going to be a team in the Big 12 championship. So shout out to Matt Campbell. I love what he's done at Iowa State, and they've been a great story, despite me losing money every single time. This one, I was on the Gophers, and they won outright against USC. As I mean, this is one I have yet to watch. Brosmer threw for a cool 169, but didn't turn the ball over, and they got that dub. This game, I mean, Lincoln Riley's offense was held in check to just 373 yards, and the turnovers, having 3 turnovers was the difference in the game. As PJ Fleck needed this one, and Fleck, you look at them at 3-3. Almost in the same vein as a Vanderbilt in a way, missed 2 field goals. Probably should have beaten North Carolina, right? The Michigan game, if they get that onside kick, who knows? They could easily be sitting there with 1 loss. It's going to be fun. I'm on the over on Minnesota too, so I'm hoping they continue to work their magic. Huge win there, and you got to wonder for USC, and this is another one for Notre Dame. Notre Dame had a tough weekend here when you think about it. Notre Dame, you need USC to look good and to the only thing that might save Notre Dame is Navy and Army being undefeated. But you look at what their opponents they played. Now the A&M win looks better, so I guess that happened. But you look elsewhere, Purdue got destroyed again. Miami, Ohio loses. Louisville loses. Stanford loses. Florida State loses. I mean, Virginia might end up helping them, and then USC loses. So, yeah, I don't know. The resume looks worse and worse for Notre Dame. This was a lock that I was on, and it cashed as San Jose State wins by 4 against Nevada. I had 7.5, I think it was. And look, we got to start talking about this. Flying under the radar. Flying under the radar is the San Jose State Spartans, whose only loss was what, a double overtime game to Washington State, 54-52 in Pullman. Now, the meat on the bone as far as teams they've beat, not amazing, but you sit there and look at the remaining schedule. They're 4-1. They're at Colorado State, which, okay, they could lose that, but they might win that. You're home to Wyoming, should be a win. At Fresno, it's a rivalry game. Who the fuck knows? Spread and shred. That offense has been with Stutzman there, been doing it. They host Boise and UNLV before taking on Stanford. So like you have. I mean, Niumatalolo has already done a great job, and they haven't really got their guys yet. It's year 1. It's going to be fun to watch. I love that hire. And shout out to Brendan Thomas. We're doing a prediction for the game Tuesday. Yes, tomorrow night, myself, NC Nick, and perhaps Patty C. But certainly myself and NC Nick will be talking about the weekday games. We have an episode dedicated to the weekday games. So we're splitting up the preview and picks now to all weekday games, 1 episode. Then we'll have 2 for the Saturday show. For the games on Saturday, 2 episodes like we normally do on Tuesdays. I just think San Jose State's been a fun story this year, and that's fantastic stuff. Michigan, Washington. The line told us everything. We took Washington, and I will say I am in contention to eating shit on my Washington lock of under 6.5 wins. I really need them to lose to Indiana. I think they're going to lose to at Iowa this week, and if that happens, then I'm looking pretty good, I think. But if they're able to get Indiana, it might put this thing in question because they have USC and UCLA in Seattle. So, but I mean, this is something where you sit there and say, Jed Fish does have them looking better than I thought they would look. So kudos to them. Michigan's offense is fucking horrible. Just 287 yards of offense. We should talk about Michigan because they are like, you look at at Illinois, I think they're going to lose that game, right? Home to Michigan State, they should be able to. They should probably win that. But home to Oregon, at Indiana, those look like losses to me. And at Ohio State, obviously, I just don't think that offense is going to win you a lot of games against those teams. So, you could be looking at a 7-5 season for Michigan this year. We'll see. I think that if I had to bet it, I think I would bet that Michigan goes 7-5. And then one that I was on, one of my favorite plays, and I played this on the money line as well. Well, Tennessee finally played a team that was ranked in the top 115 in offense, and their defense played well even at that. But I'm just not buying it, man. Arkansas got that win 19-14. And it was super impressive. They did it and how about Malachi Singleton coming in and having some big plays there when Taylor Green went down. And Tennessee, once again, this is shame on the preseason polls because they keep doing this. And we learn as we go. Like, I was the first to say Tennessee looked incredible, but then you learn. Well, we knew that Kent State and Chattanooga were nothing, right? Well, we learned that NC State's fucking horrible. We learned that Oklahoma we don't think is good, despite them being 4-1. We think Oklahoma will be 500 probably. And you wonder about who is Tennessee? They got Florida next week. I think that's going to be a game. Then they got Bama, then they got Kentucky, and you're sitting there saying, man, this team, even at Vanderbilt to end the season, they have at Georgia still out there too. You look at this, you're like, is this team gonna I have them to make the playoffs. I have a future for them to make the playoffs, but they certainly don't look like it to me. This is their first game against. I mean that offense struggled against Sam Pittman and that defense that they only had 332 yards of offense against Arkansas, folks. To remind you. I just want to do this exercise. Oklahoma State had what? They had what's crazy is Arkansas almost had 700 yards of offense against Oklahoma State, but 385, right? What did UAB do against Arkansas? They had 354. So why I find that interesting is because you're sitting here saying, how the hell for this team to come in with the hype of potentially, number 4 in the nation, and then to only have 332 yards of offense. That to me is a red flag. We'll see moving forward. Is the SEC bad? In the chat, they're asking. I just think college football is average. Like, as far as there's no dominant teams. We think it's Ohio State right now. I think you could argue a lot of other teams, and that's what's going to make it fascinating for this 12-team playoff. Is I think there's no one that looks that great. Maybe Ohio State, but Ohio State's also had the easiest schedule. We'll see down the stretch. But what a win for Pittman. You're getting himself off the hot seat. Him, Bobby Petrino. Yeah, Texas would be another one. Texas looks good, but I actually have because Texas I almost feel like falls in the Tennessee bin. Because you start to look at Texas's opponents, you're like, wait, but Michigan's not good. I mean, Michigan will end up 7-5, but Mississippi State's horrible. You could argue that Texas, their best wins at Michigan, but after that, Colorado State's fucking horrible. What's their second best win? ULM? Yeah, I don't know. I think they might be vulnerable. I think they might be more vulnerable than we realize. How about this one? UCF gets beat down by Florida, and the Gators and Billy Napier have life 3-2 with Tennessee and Kentucky on deck. Hey, I mean, what if he ends up going 6-6? I'll tell you this: the end of the schedule that everyone thought was so daunting does not look so daunting anymore. All right. Florida State's horrible, and LSU and Ole Miss certainly look way more beatable. I don't think it's as hard of a schedule as people thought. This is why preseason talk is stupid. And I say this as someone that releases 150 episodes. It's fun to visualize, but you don't know how these teams will be. Injuries play a role. Chemistry plays a role. And especially in this day and age, to me, like when we there's so many different players on each team, it's really fucking hard to do our job to cover these sports. Now, I tend to think we do a great job. Thank you very much. But huge win for the Gators there in the swamp, and UCF moves to 3-2 as well. Hopefully you got the hook in Hawaii. I did not. I got 3 points, and it pushed as San Diego State wins 27-24 against Hawaii. But I did cash on this. Georgia Tech 24, Duke 14. The Yellow Jackets in the perfect spot take down the Duke Blue Devils. Big win for Tech. Duke still having a good season, 5-1. If you any Duke fan would have took 5-1 out the gate, so still having a good season. And then the game I was at, sorry, I forgot to do this, but the game I was at was Kansas, Arizona State, and I cashed on this one. This was a great football game. Arizona State hits and Kansas, 5 losses, I think, all by single digits. You wonder, just is it Jeff Grimes? Is it the NIL, Jalen Daniels? And another thing is, what Kenny Dillingham's got Arizona State at 4-1. They host Utah this Friday. Now, folks, historically, Utah has struggled in the desert, even under Kyle Whittingham. So the crowd environment was great, as Daniel's mentioning in the chat, and it was a fun game. And I think if you're an Arizona State fan, you're thinking, why not us? Especially in this Big 12 where anything's possible. So big win there. Cashed, and then cashed on Cal +10. I did have Cal money line, which did not cash, and I'm still super mad about this. The targeting penalty. Let's talk about this, because first off, shout out to Cal Berkeley for their fans showing up. Look, I hate targeting. And in my opinion, it has no place in football unless it is truly lethal, which to me, like if it's deliberate, like targeting should probably call it, in my opinion, it should probably be called like 2 or 3 times a year for the whole sport. When like something is so malicious and over the top. But the fact it's called so frequently on so many of these bullshit calls, and then the fact that it happens at a critical time when Miami was just benefited a win essentially on to me something that just didn't prove their case. I have issues with it, because if we're going to call targeting at all other times, then based on those other targeting calls, which are all, like I said, 99% of them are bullshit, then that was targeting. Do I think the player should have been, flagged and kicked out of the game? No, because I don't believe in the rule. I think the rule is ridiculous, right? For the most part, or what they're calling it as the rule. But it was consistent with what they call targeting with every other fucking play or when we watch the sport. So I would be absolutely irate if I was Justin Wilcox and Cal fans. You have a point. But let's talk about the touchdown. They score on a run option pass touchdown where 2 of their offensive linemen are like 5 yards deep into the end zone, which is clear illegal man down the field. So, I mean, it's getting a little old to me. Like, how do you miss this? If that was Cal, they would have called that. And this is what bothers me. And I know I sound like I'm fucking, play the X-Files music. I just watch the sport. I think more than most. And I'm like, I don't believe that happens. If those plays were the other way around, the targeting and the illegal man downfield, and Cal was about to come back from behind, I really believe they would have been called. And that is bad for the fucking sport. It sucks. And you also ruined a special moment for Berkeley. Their first time ever getting College game day. They were the better team, in my opinion, than Miami. Rewatched the game here today. And And that's a problem. That's a problem for the sport. Miami does not belong in the 6-0 bracket, in my opinion. They do not. If you want to say the Virginia Tech game, I would disagree with you, but I would say you can't tell me both of these games, all those calls should have went those ways for Miami. You cannot tell me that. They should have a loss, and it's complete bullshit. 8 shit on Texas Tech, Arizona. How about Joey McGuire and Texas Tech, who I thought might get fired this year after the Washington State game? They're 5-1. And then you take a peek at their remaining schedule: home to Baylor, at TCU. Now they could lose those games, but they could still be 7-1. And then you look at the final stretch of at Iowa State. You don't have a Big 12 loss yet. So if that happens, then home to Colorado, at Oklahoma State, home to West Virginia. I mean, some of those teams are undefeated in conference play, but the path looks a little more wide open. So looks more attainable for Texas Tech to essentially be playing in the Big 12 championship. But big win there in Tucson, 28-22 against the Wildcats. And what a win. I can't wait to watch this upcoming week. Is to me, arguably, I don't know. It's hard to say that after this past weekend, but on paper, some of the matchups we have this week, and I know I got to get out of here, but there's some big time, whether it's Utah, Arizona State that I touched on a Friday night. All of a sudden I think a lot of these other games, Penn State, USC, we knew that one, major playoff implications essentially on that. The Red River Shootout always delivers. I feel like, Abner Lopez, you don't come back from 25 points. And it wasn't just one call, dude. It wasn't just one call. That's my problem. I'm okay with them not calling targeting if they're consistent to it. And what do you mean? What do you mean you don't come back? If you're in a game down 25 points, I'm sorry. You probably don't deserve to fucking win the game. Sell me on that logic. Yeah, completely disagree. And if you think Miami looks good the past 2 weeks, well then you got to be a delusional Miami fan, because they have not looked good when you watch them. Now the weeks prior, they look fantastic. The Florida game, they look fantastic. The past 2 weeks, Miami has not looked like a good football team, in my opinion, like a national contending football team. So we'll see moving forward. I mean, the schedule, they don't have a lot of meat on the bone for the schedule. So, I mean, they might end up in a spot where they're in the playoffs, but we'll see. But this week, Red River Shootout always delivers. Super excited for that. Then you have obviously Ohio State, Oregon, Florida, Tennessee. I think has got more punch to it. Ole Miss, LSU. I mean, there's just the Vandy, Kentucky game. All of a sudden, you're just like, okay. Kansas State, Colorado, huge game in the Big 12 there at Folsom Field. And there's a slew of other ones too. This week's awesome. Can't wait for it. We will have you covered on all of this action tomorrow and Tuesday. So subscribe to the College Football Experience, youtube.com/the College Experience. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'm on Twitter, the Colby D. Give me a follow at the Colby D. And also, please, if you can, hop on over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and make sure you check out, all of our other stuff, the College Basketball Experience. We have a Big East preview that we're doing tomorrow night. So be prepared for that one, and a slew of other stuff that we have. All these conference previews coming out. You got to check it out. Also, make sure you check out the College Baseball Experience, the FCS College Football Experience reaction show will be tomorrow. We'll react to a wild week of FCS action tomorrow morning. So check that out as well, and make sure to check out what am I talking about here? The Bottom Line Bombs with CJ Sullivan. We didn't do our episode this week as he was on the road. But Sports Gambling Podcast, the CFL Gambling Podcast, is the road to the Grey Cup, and just everybody that at SGPN that is doing all this great content. I mean, MLB right now, MLB gambling podcast, the hockey gambling podcast, NBA's right around the corner. So you got everything there. Check it all out. Get that SGPN app. Till next time, folks. And shout out to all the people that met up in Arizona. Rennie, you're the fucking man. Just you appreciate you, man. And yeah, everyone that met up. Daniel, there's a slew of great people that came out and met up. I can't recall everyone's name right now, but in order. But you're all fucking fantastic people. Till next time, this is the College Football Experience. You better start thinking about yours, and we out of here.